Okay, so who can tell me an important biblical event that happened the last week of Tishrei? Anyone can think of one?
Nisuch Hamayim.
The temple.
What about the temple?
Wasn't it dedicated in the last week of Tishrei? Wasn't it dedicated later? Not
No, the temple, which temple? First one or second one?
first one.
The first temple was dedicated in the month of Tishrei. And how long was it? When was the dedication ceremony done?
14 days ended.
It didn't say 14, it says 7 days and 7 days.
Okay.
Okay, 7 days and 7 days. And then, which coincided with Sukkot. So it's not clear when you first read it, is it 7 days of Sukkot and an extra 7 days of Sukkot? Or is it 7 days before Sukkot and then they missed Yom Kippur? That's a whole topic I'm not going to get into. But they dedicated, now, when was the Mishkan dedicated?
Right after Yom Kippur.
No, the Mishkan was dedicated Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
I started to build.
The Mishkan was dedicated Rosh Chodesh Nisan, according to Chumash. The last chapter in Sefer Shemot, God tells Moshe on the first day of the first month, to set up the Mishkan, we have 7 days of Miluim and Yom HaShmini, and the Shekhinah comes back, etc. But the Mishkan was dedicated in Nisan, which makes sense. It's a year since we left Egypt. But the temple is going to be dedicated by Shlomo in the 7th month. Even though they start building in the 2nd month, we wait to dedicate it to the 7th month. We wait for that day to do it. How about the second temple? That people don't know about, do we?
It was dedicated on Hanukkah. That's what it says in the Sefer Chagai.
No, it wasn't dedicated. It was, they broke ground on Hanukkah. They did a groundbreaking ceremony on Hanukkah in year 2 of Daryavish. But when was it dedicated?
Years later.
How many years later? Okay, don't worry. It's only a verse in the Bible. That's why the Talmud doesn't have to mention it. So
There are two different, according to my old friend Dov Zakheim, in his book on Ezra and Nehemiah, there are two different chronologies, and it's controversial as to which one to use.
Okay, so we'll read what might seem to be a contradiction. So I don't think it is, but we'll see. First, we'll open up the book of Ezra, which makes sense because he talks about it. Amen. And remember, we break ground in Chagai and Hanukkah, but in chapter 6 in the book of Ezra, it sounds like Aramaic. We can read it in English. The Shavi, what do you call it? Those who returned with the help of Chagai, Neviah, and Zechariah, and with the help of Koresh, Dayavish, and Artashasta, etc. And then verse 15. They finished the construction that began in year 2 on Hanukkah, is finished in year 6 in the reign of Daryavish, about 3-4 years later. Okay? On what day? On the 3rd day of Adar. Now, it's so close to Adar, let's see what you're going to do now. Therefore, they do a Chanukah Beit Hashem, okay? And they bring special korbanot, etc. And right afterwards, they do V'yasu b'nei Gola at Pesach b'arba'asar l'chodesh harishon. So sometime between the 6th of Adar and Passover, they dedicated the Mishkan. It makes sense to me. They probably did it Rosh Chodesh Nisan, like the Mishkan. We don't have the exact date, but we have the time period. But in preparation for the spring, before Pesach, okay? Because it took time for the Kohanim to become purified, etc. Okay? And then, but they did it in time. They finished the Mikdash in time to do Tahara and bring Korban Pesach properly. Okay? And then by Yasu Chag HaMatzot, Shivat Yamim b'Simcha, Ki Simcham Hashem, etc. And that's it. Now, that's when they build the temple. That's in the time of Daryavish. In the meantime, everything falls apart. 13 years later, Nehemiah comes in year 20 of Daryavish. I'm sorry, many years later, 50 decades later. Nehemiah comes, Ezra comes in year 7, fixes things up a little bit. Nehemiah comes in year 20. The city's still in shambles a bit, and they fix up the wall. The temple was built, but the wall of the city is in shambles, and there's lots of local population giving them trouble. And in chapter 7, Nehemiah, from chapter 6 and 7, Nehemiah puts the wall together, okay, and puts up shomrim, etc. And they do. Here they finished actually probably the end of chapter 6. It's finished, if I'm not mistaken. Here in chapter 6, verse 15. ותשלם החומה ב-25 לאלול ב-52 יום. They finished not the temple, but the wall of the city that protects the city. That's finished on the 25th of Elul. Okay, just a little trivia. Now, if I finish the wall, we're going to have a celebration, correct? So chapter 7 talks, that's the end of chapter 6. Chapter 7 talks about the a list of why he has all this. We'll leave that alone for now. I'm sorry, that was in chapter 7. Chapter 7 at the end. Sorry about that. In the end of chapter 7, you have all these people, and then finally at the very end, and everyone comes. Okay? They finished the wall on the 20th of Elul, and now it's the 7th month, like a week later, and that takes us right into chapter 8. And there's a whole, we're going to read this later on. There's a whole gathering. Actually, maybe we'll read it now to appreciate the event, because there's this section, chapter 8, Nehemiah. Everyone should study this in their day-to-day Judaism. You see why? Because there's so many halachot that we keep because of this parak. We finished the wall. Everyone's excited. We have a little bit of nationalism. We don't have sovereignty yet, but we have a protected wall, and we're making a name for ourselves. And the local population is giving us a hard time, are finally scared of us a little bit. Nehemiah has trouble with Sanballat, but Nehemiah does a great job getting the city organized. And then what happens? It's Rosh Hashanah. ויביא עזרא הכהן את התורה לפני הקהל מאיש ועד אישה, כל מבין לשמוע, ביום אחד לחודש השביעי. There's a special Rosh Hashanah that day, and they dedicate Rosh Hashanah to Torah study. Now, Vayikra lifnei rachov, they read the Torah out loud. The rachov doesn't mean the street, it means the plaza. A wide open area is called the plaza, which is in front of the Watergate. Have you heard of Watergate? Here's the source for Watergate, Sharmaim. Okay, from early in the morning until noon. Okay, and believe it or not, women were invited together with the men equally. Okay, and also they understood women, men, v'oznei kol ha'am et Sefer Torah. Everyone was invited to Torah study, women equally. Now, Vayamod Ezra HaSofer, Amigdalis, Ezra's put a big bima on top. That's the minhag to have a bima in the middle of a shul, higher than everyone else is for here. Vayamod Etzlo, when he has a whole list of gabayim on his right and his left. Plus the K. Vayiftach Ezra HaSefer le'nei kol ha'am, kimal kol ha'am haya, u'kepitro amdu kol ha'am. He opened up the Sefer Torah before he read from it, showed it to everybody, and everyone stood up. What custom do we have because of this pasuk?
Hagba.
Agba,
And based on this pasuk, when should Hagba take place? Before Kriyat Torah or after?
before.
And if you have no Edot Mizrach, they have it right.
Vardim.
They always. Okay. Then by Varech Ezra, that's why Ezra is also a very popular name in Sephardic communities. By Varech Ezra, et Hashem Elohim HaGadol. Oh, he makes a bracha, Birchat Torah. Ve'enu kol ha'am amen ve'amen. Now we name by two and they bow down. That's Birchat Torah. That's Torah study when you do it out loud. Then we have all the Gabayim again. And what are they doing? They're teaching the people Torah. People standing. It's the rabbi's speech. And there's no Kiddush club yet. Because he was a cool rabbi. He had what to tell the people. Okay. Vayikra Sefer Torah Telim Meforash. Okay. B'som Sechel. V'yavinu b'mikra. Some people say that's Tamei Mikra, etc. But they came to explain the Torah. It's a learn-a-thon. Got it? It takes place on Rosh Hashanah. Now, so Nehemiah and Ezra are together with them, teaching the people Torah, and the people, it takes a holy day, special day to God. But the people are sad because there are all these laws now that they didn't know before. There are all these, oh my gosh, that's Judaism. You have to be nice to your wall. You're not allowed to lie, and you can't cheat, and you can't make up fake news for political reasons and things like that. No, and there's all these laws, and they start crying. Oh my gosh, the people are crying when they hear all these laws that they didn't know they had to keep. What's he tell them? This is so Jewish and educational. Right? How to get people involved starts with food. That's our Kiddush club after the rabbi's speech. We know that from Rosh Hashanah davening. Everyone knows that pasuk, right? From davening. because the Chazan always makes a big deal about it. People don't realize why it's in Rosh Hashanah davening. Now you know why. And don't worry, okay? Because you know, don't be grieved because God's joy should be with you. And the Levim, not just their teaching, they're also telling the people, listen, stop crying. This tastes special. Don't be sad. Be happy, don't be sad. Okay? People go home to Lechol v'lishtot, l'shach manot. Okay? And then the next day, come back to shul tomorrow. 2 days Rosh Hashanah now. Come back to shul and we'll learn some more. Okay? We have a buy-in. Maybe there'll be another kiddush. To learn more Torah. What did they find? Pasuk Yudalef. Vayimtzu katuv b'Torah asher tziva Hashem b'yad Moshe asher yeshvu b'nei Yisrael b'Sukkot b'chad b'chodesh hashvi'i. Hey, they found, hey, there's this law. Oh my gosh, Sukkot. Never heard about that law. Okay? And therefore, what do they do? Asher yashmiu v'yaviru kol b'chol harim yushan lemor tzu ahar v'aviu alizayit, etc. Word gets out. We're celebrating Sukkot this year. Big deal. Sukkot, we'll see. There had never been a Sukkot like this since the time of Yeshua. We'll see. Not that it was never celebrated, but it wasn't done publicly. It wasn't so. I'll give you an example I'd like to bring. Like Shavuot, I'm used to always kept, but the Shavuot after the 6-day war, there was nothing like it. If you know the story, everyone runs to the Kotel. It was a big deal. There was never a Shavuot like that in hundreds of years. Now, same thing. So people go. Again, basically, they built sukkahs everywhere in Jerusalem, by their houses, whoever living there, in the public spaces, in the areas, and all the people do this big sukkot, because there's nothing like this at the time of Yeshua ben Nun. Okay, and then what do they do on Sukkot? Vayikra b'Sefer Torah Elohim. Again, a study session now, yom b'yom, every day, from the first day to the last day. ועשו חג 7 ימים, וביום השמיני עצרת כמשפט. Okay? Now, they read their Chumash. Now, people love to ask a big question here. What holiday did we skip? We went from Rosh Hashanah right to Sukkot, right? So what do the critics like to say?
Oh, no, Yom Kippur.
Where's Yom Kippur? Now, how about where's Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Where's everything? Where's Birchas Hamazon when you eat food? The topic isn't every single law. The topic here is education and all the efforts that the leadership is making to bring Torah back. And people start learning. I need to do something to get them learning again. And what do? There's nothing like a mitzvah where people are involved. That's just like Am Yisrael needed to build a Mishkan to get them back together after Chet HaEgel. It's part of a tshuva process. It's a group project. And like, remember, we talked about when we did the end of Sefer Shemot, the people don't build the Mishkan builds the people. So Ezra and Nehemiah are using the laws of Sukkot to get the people to come back and learn more. But first, let's do a mitzvah together. If you know Chabad and Chassidut, it works like a charm. Do a mitzvah and then give it meaning. So it's not that they learned a lot of things that day. It wasn't only Sukkot they found, but they made a big deal about Sukkot because they want everyone involved. And this guy builds their sukkah and everyone. It's a big happening. And again, 2 weeks later, everyone has Sukkot. And what did we do on Sukkot? We learned day by day. Okay, now we're ready for our topic. That was chapter 8. Chapter 9, listen carefully. Now, Sukkot is over on the 22nd, if I'm not mistaken. Shmini Atzeret. Then you have Isur Chag, or maybe people from who are keeping 2 days. We'll see. I'm joking. Okay. Uvyom 24 l'chodesh. Okay. The day after Isur Chag. Nesfu b'nei Yisrael b'tzom v'sakim v'adama aleim. Oh, now the Sukkot is over. Now let's fast. Remember, they didn't want to fast on Yom Tov, but there's a need to fast to do real tshuva. So let's do something positive thing. And now that we had this whole week of Sukkot, now I'm going to transition now to my year. And the last week in Tishrei, what are we doing? We're getting ready for a whole year, and we're doing proper tshuva. By Badu, first they get rid of their foreign wives, okay? And they do vidui, they do confession on their sins, etc. They read out loud, and the fast day, a quarter of the day they read, a quarter of the day they did confession, etc. To Hashem their God. Okay? And then it's time to give the rabbi speech. Listen to the rabbi's speech that you talk about every day without realizing that you do this every day. ויקום המלא הלווים ישוב וקדמיהו, etc. ויזעקו בקול גדול השם Elohem. They cry out to God by fiery speech, like a good rabbi, like a good Balmasur. Okay. Vayimru haLevim, and again, the whole skipped all these people. Kumu birchu et Hashem Elechem. First, let's make a blessing in before our Torah study. Min olamvad olam. Vayivchu Shem kodechem raman kol brachatila. So the people get up and say Baruch. Got it? And they continue and bless God from God's above all blessings. Okay. And listen to the speech that we say, which we quote before Baruch every day. Okay. Atahu Hashem levadecha. אתה עשית את השמיים, שמי השמיים וכל צבאם אשר הלב הים אשר בהם, ואתה מחיה את כולם, סוף שמי משתחווים, אתה בחרת באברהם. Doesn't this all look familiar? From here, right? We say this every day in davening, don't we? In the middle of Avarach David, we switch from David HaMelech, when they get the first temple ready, when he gives everything over to Shlomo in chapter 29, and we skip in the middle of a pasuk right to Nehemiah in the beginning of Vayikra. Now, almost all of us say this, at least those who make it to Pesukei Zimra. We say this every day in davening. And I'm assuming 99 out of 100 people have no idea where it comes from, other than they know it's from Nehemiah, but they don't know the context. It was composed the last week of Tishrei. So I'm bringing the last week of Tishrei into every day of our lives now. Now, what are they doing? They're giving a speech, a historical speech. We only quote the beginning of it. Okay? Umatzat levot v'deman lefanecha. Remember, by Min Bashem Yashvol Tzedakah, I think. Uchrotim Abrit. Isn't this Brit Ben Abtarim? Again, I don't want to give a whole share here on the speech, but it's definitely Brit Ben Abtarim. V'tertani Avatim V'Yisrael Zakat Shemata. We have a quick Vayibakat Lifneim. And here's, we end our quote in davening, and we go to Shirat Hayam. But that's our quote in davening. It's the beginning of a whole history speech through the time in the desert, how bad we were, how good God was, how bad we were, how God good was, in the desert, in the land of Israel, and we kept on sinning, and until it got so bad, hundreds of years later, he had to throw us out of the land, and even though God was mean to us, sound familiar? We've been mumbling that in Slichot. There's so much of davening here. It's just a shame people don't know the context. Now, and if you know education and programming, you see the need to have mitzvot, like how to take building projects and use them as educational opportunities. Now, you gave them a kingdom, you gave us sovereignty during that time, and we did a terrible job. And in our melucha, right, you did all this good for us, okay? But we didn't serve you properly, and we continued in our bad ways. And now we finally came back thanks to your intervention, but we're still under foreign rule. We're servants now to the Persians. We don't have sovereignty. And the land you gave us, we have to pay taxes to other people. So all the produce we're making, we pay taxes to the Persian king, okay, because of our sins. And this is really bad. But even though our situation is way worse than it was before, but we're back in our land, and now we're going to take upon ourselves to keep mitzvot. Okay? This is a famous amanah, and they take upon themselves to keep the Torah properly. And even though, because we don't have sovereignty, we're not obligated in Bikurim, remember? Because we don't have Yerusha. Possibly we're not obligated in Trumot Masrot, etc. Dioraita. Therefore, Ezra was called what's called Kedusha Shniya. We take upon ourselves to do mitzvot. Okay? What does it say? Ve'manu aleinu mitzvot. We added more mitzvot that we weren't obligated, adding a third shekel to the chatziyah shekel, and making more donations, all these different things, including bringing our bikurim, and basically all these laws of Trumot Masrot. There's a whole complex, but we're not obligated because we're only obligated Dioraita at the Torah level when we have sovereignty. Even though we don't have sovereignty, we're going to treat the land as though we're sovereign with the hope that God will bring back our sovereignty. That's called Kedusha Shniya. That's a topic in Halacha, which I'm leaving alone for now. Our topic is the end of the month of Tishrei. Got it? So in my opinion, this is a really important event which we can learn from, where we take the holidays, okay, and we don't leave the sukkah, we bring the sukkah to our home, if you catch what I'm getting at. Now, I want to use this. I want to go back and talk about the holiday we just celebrated called, that was in chapter 8. Remember, they start to sell this Shuvah 2 days after Yom Tov. But at the end of chapter 7, what do? We celebrated 7 days and 7 days. Here, I'm sorry that we did that. Basically, remember they did 7 days Chag Sukkot, remember? And they did Shmini Atzeret. Now, that's my share that's our background. So far, so good? That's a big event. Now, I want to use the word Atzeret and Shmini Atzeret to understand what Ezra is doing and what we need to do based on what Atzeret means in Chumash. Now I get to ask some questions, see if people are awake. And there's no source sheet today because, okay, very good. Okay, we'll get to, Susan said these are things written in symbolism of numbers. Okay, that's our pregame, discussion. It's similar to, okay, Yeshua's speech in chapter 23 is very similar. It's an historical review. That's a really good question that Yosef is asking about. The speech is very similar going through Jewish history before entering a covenant. That happens in Yeshua chapter 24. It's happened in chapter 3, it's a different speech, but that's a class in Sefer Yeshua, which we'll leave alone for now. Now back to our topic. Let me stop I stopped the share. I did the thing. Now, in general, when we have a holiday, the Torah reading usually relates to the holiday, correct? Now, Shavuot, we learn Matan Torah. On Pesach, we learn every day from something, another story. Now, what do we read for Sukkot? Where do we read? Where in Chumash does it talk about Sukkot? Lots of places, right?
Yeah,
So we have lots of opportunities.
Emor.
Yeah. In Emor, we have Sukkot, we have Shlosh Regalim in Shmot. In Parshat Mishpatim, we have in Kitisa, we have it in Re'eh, and we have no shortage. Now, how many times where in Chumash does it talk about Shmini Atzeret? Notice, if I need a Torah reading for Shmini Atzeret, what are my options?
Tack on to Sukkot.
Okay, but it's not Sukkot, that's the problem.
Re'eh.
I should read about Shmini Atzeret, but there's only 2 places in Chumash to talk about it. One is in Pinchas, which we can read from after anyhow. If we take out Tuhad, and now we need something for the first Sefer Torah. The only other place in Shmini Atzeret is in Emor, in Parachav Gimel and Vayikra. But we read that already twice on the first 2 days in Chutz La'aretz, didn't we? Now in Israel we don't have a problem because it's Simchas Torah, the same holiday, so we do, Chasan Torah, Chasan Breshis. But in Chutz La'aretz, what do we read? What do we read on Shmini Atzeret in Chutz La'aretz? Which I had to in America again. What?
Which doesn't even mention Shmini Atzeret.
Which one? I'm sorry, say that again.
Parshat Re'eh.
In Parshat Re'eh, we read from Aser Taser from end of chapter 14, but we do Re'eh, which ends up with the Shlosh Regalim. In fact, we're quoting from Shmonesrei from Musaf. Shlosh Pamim B'Shana Yireh Kol Tzchak Pnei Adon Hashem. That's the end of Parshat Re'eh. Now that's a good reading for Sukkot, but Re'eh doesn't talk about Shmini Atzeret, does it? So, in other words, it seems like we ran out of possibilities and we're just reading something because it's sort of like the last day of Sukkot. Now, I want to explain to you how awesome it is that we're reading from Shmini Atzeret from Re'eh. Why? Because one last question. Is there any other holiday other than Shmini Atzeret that's called Atzeret?
Rishon Pesach.
Shavuot.
Shavuot, right? Now,
No,
we're in Chumash.
Rishon Pesach.
Wait a second. Most people say Shavuot. If you're a Talmid Chacham, you'll say Shavuot. Why? Because the rabbis call Shavuos Atzeret. Remember, from Atzeret to Sukkot, you can bring and read Bikurim and things like that. Chumash doesn't call Shavuot Atzeret. The rabbis call it Atzeret. We'll see later for a good reason. But someone got the right answer. One other holiday is called Atzeret. And say that again. What holiday is called Atzeret?
Rishon Pesach.
Which day of Pesach?
The last day.
The last day of Pesach. Pesach is, according to the Bible I read, there's only one day of Pesach.
The
Pesach is
7th day of
holiday.
Chag HaMatzot.
Now we're talking business. The last day of Chag HaMatzot is called Atzeret. And we're going to read about that now. And I want to get a deeper understanding of what the word Atzeret means from the last day of Chag HaMatzot which is detailed in what book? In Sefer Dvarim in Parshat Rei in chapter 16 in Rei, which we read on Shmini Atzeret. Shmini Atzeret doesn't talk about our Shmini Atzeret, but it talks about Atzeret and the meaning of Atzeret in a very beautiful way. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, the next part of this year, is I'm going to do a careful study of chapter 16 in Dvarim, which we call the Shosh Regalim, and try to understand in what context we have the word Atzeret. Now, in Hebrew, how would you translate Atzeret? What's the shortish of the word? I'm going to stop for a minute. I'm going to stop for a minute and discuss together with all of you the meaning of Atzeret.
It's closing.
Now, who can explain my joke?
It's the
I'm going to
closing.
stop for a minute and discuss together with you
Yeah,
the meaning of Atzeret.
It means stop.
And it
Atzor.
also means
Closing.
together. Right? What's an Atzeret? In modern day Hebrew,
A rally.
called a demonstration. Atzeret Zikaron. When people gather together, it's called an Atzeret. But a stop sign is also called Atzor, isn't it? Ani Atzor, I'm held back. So are you held back to gather? The question, what word comes first? But in modern day Hebrew, it has two meanings. One is a gathering and one is to stop. And if you look at on the word Atzeret in Chumash, read Ibn Ezra, Rashbam, they all discuss both possibilities and they like to argue about it. And they try to tie it together. That's a class in etymology of words. I don't want to go into that, but you can read the Parshanim. They're all nice and clear.
It's the
The
closing.
double meaning for me is important. Gershon, what you want to say?
It's the closing of houses after we've been living in open sukkot.
It's a type of closure. It could be. Now,
It's the opposite of sukkot.
it could be. I mean, we don't sit in a sukkah.
No, but the sukkot is open, like an ohel, which is open.
I mean, my sukkah was I had 4 walls in my sukkah, and a roof that was a little flimsy. The roof, the walls weren't exactly permanent, but we were closed in. But anyway, that's a different discussion. But what I want to talk about, I want to get the word Atzeret. Now, going back to Shmini Atzeret for a minute. Shmini Atzeret is the last day of what? Ask anybody. Shmini Atzeret is the last day of
People say the last
Sukkot, people say, correct?
it's not real.
But it's not, because it's not Sukkot. Now, what do we do on Shmini Atzeret? What's the special mitzvah of Shmini Atzeret?
Nothing.
You all just gave me the right answer.
Yontif, that's all.
We do nothing.
The
You
sukkot.
score.
Right?
We leave.
No, that's it.
the sukkot.
I'm talking Bible, right? We do nothing.
We
And
do
that's what's
something.
special, remember? What's
We do
special is that there's
something
nothing
very
special about it.
important. We leave the sukkot.
Of course, we're not chayav to sit in a sukkah. Are you allowed to sit in a sukkah?
No, not the Torah doesn't want us.
It might be
to sit in
Baltosif
the
if it's
sukkah.
raining. That's a question in Chutz La'aretz. And we don't take lulav, but you sit in a sukkah, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Ask your local rabbi or a Hasidic Rav. Okay, there's a lot of differences, we'll see. It's different than Sukkot. It's not Sukkot. I think we even make a Shechianu. It's a new holiday, right? And we buy new clothes for another. Whoa, you follow? It's a separate holiday. Now,
Is it a closure for the whole holiday season? for
that's the
Rosh
question. Is it
Hashanah?
the closure just of Sukkot or is it the closure of the whole month of Tishrei? Got it?
The
Guess
Cor-
where we're going? I
Tell
want to
us.
claim it's not only closure of Sukkot, it's also closure for Yom Kippur and for Rosh Hashanah.
The
But that's
korbanot.
just closure. Now, let me just give my punchline, and then I'll come and explain it, okay? In Israel, what is Atzor mean?
Stop.
Stop.
A stop sign. Now, it's a stop sign, but not a dead end. Hope you're smiling now. Got it? Because what do you do after you stop at the stop sign?
You go
If there's a
forward.
film watching or a camera, you stop.
You go forward.
Right? You continue traveling. But you stop first, you take a stop, a break, and then you continue. So we're stopping not to stop, we're stopping to continue. And what we need to do, we need to bring the holiday, we have to take what we did in the holiday, internalize it, and not move away, but move on. As Gershon, I think, was referring to, we bring the sukkah to our home. We don't leave the sukkah, we bring the sukkah into our home. And that's the halacha. We take the kelim with the sukkah and move them into our house. You can't take apart the sukkah, that's bona and sota, that's halacha problems. But thematically, we take the sukkah into our home because you can't leave the sukkah. Just like we'll see in a minute. But what did Am Yisrael do after Yom Kippur when we got the Luchot? What did we do right after we got Bidot Rachamim on Yom Kippur?
Started to build a
Mishkan.
Mishkan.
And that's why we have a beautiful custom. Like historically, right after Yom Kippur, when we got the second Luchot, Midat Rachamim, the first thing we did, we had commandment to build a Mishkan. What did we do after we break our fast of Yom Kippur?
Start to build a sukkah.
We get our kids to build the sukkah for us because we're too old. So we try to help. Now, but we build the sukkah. It's a famous minhag, isn't it? To start the sukkah Mitzvah Yom Kippur.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's built on the beautiful connection to the Mishkan. Now, back to Shmini Atzeret. Okay, now I'm going to read now. How much time do we have left? I lost that. We have another 20 minutes. Okay, we're good. Now I'm going to read Parshat Rei now and try to understand what Atzeret means, and then use that to explain why Atzeret of Shmini Atzeret is not just from Sukkot, but it's for the whole month of Tishrei and all the holidays. So let's take a look. I'll share my screen, and I'm purposely going to use now a chumash. What chumash do I want? I don't want English Hebrew. I want a Hebrew one here, because I want to see it's easy Hebrew. I want to see the unit. See, there's a parsha here. Okay. Shmor chodesh aviv, vasita pasach Hashem Elokecha. That's nothing new, right? We know that already from Sefer Shemot. Okay, because God took us out of Egypt. In Egypt, that's a review of Parshat Mishpatim. Bring Pesach to Hashem Elokecha tzona bakar. White tzona bakar. If we have time, we'll talk about that later. But Pesach, and we celebrated B'makom Asher Yivchar, the Shakein Shmosham, and this is a theme for Devarim, because in Devarim, ever since chapter 12, there's all these mitzvot that are done by B'makom Asher Yivchar Hashem, and what later becomes Yerushalayim in the temple. Basically, Pesach, don't bring it home like Sefer Shemot says, but rather, once there's the temple, come to Jerusalem for Yom Tov. Now, after we mention this yearly celebration of the spring, listen carefully to Pasuk Gimel, because you know this, we quote this a lot. Lo tachal alav chametz means when you bring the Pesach, no chametz allowed. We know that too well. Instead, we eat matzah for 7 days. Lechem oni, conversation bread, poor man's bread, bread of affliction, whatever you want to call it. We just started a conversation about how poor man's bread reminds us of our affliction. If you remember the 3 meanings of oni, remember ani, oni, and onet. Okay? Ki b'chipazon yatzatem eretz Mitzrayim. Listen carefully now. The reason we go crazy once a year, we've talked about this many times, is to remember the Exodus every day of our life. Got that? Now, in other words, what is Chumash saying here? The reason I go crazy once a year and bring this Passover celebration and eat matzah for 7 days and don't eat chametz for 7 days, I go crazy for a whole week. The goal of the once a year celebration is a daily memory. Now, if you read Chumash, what does this daily memory do for us? For example, when we have to celebrate and be kind to the Ger Yatom and Almanah, when we celebrate in Shavuot, remember what? Remember you were a slave in Egypt? Let me go back for a minute and we'll just have a little fun for a second. If you can see, we'll go back to Nehemiah. I can go to, no, it's fine. I'll go to, just give you some examples from, I'll stay in Devarim for a minute. In chapter 5, remember why do we keep Shabbat in Sefer Devarim? Okay, we keep Shabbat in Sefer Devarim. Remember Shabbat Lachach, why? L'man yanuach avdecha b'amatcha kamocha. So your workers have a day of rest. Remember, you were a slave in Egypt, and that's why God took you out. Remember, not just to remember Christ, remember how to treat your fellow man. As long as we're in Sefer Devarim, let's go to chapter 10 should be good. Chapter 10. You have a good God. He's a God. He's the God of all gods. Who doesn't take bribes, etc. God takes care of the stranger by what? By commanding us because we're strangers in Egypt. Remember that this memory shapes our behavior. As long as we're in Dvarim, chapter 24, verse 17. If you're doing business, don't pervert justice to a strange orphan widow, etc. Remember what? Remember you were a slave in Egypt, and that's why God took you out. That's why I put you in to take you out. Therefore, I'm commanding you, Remember, transformative memory, your memory of the yesterday's experience shapes your day-to-day behavior. Not just saying thank you, but acting thank you. Remember how you suffer, not do that to others. I'll just end with one more. It's not just Dvarim. We go to Shmot. Probably the best example of them all is right before the Shalosh Regalim. Midvar Sheker Terchak. This is in Mishpatim, chapter after 3 chapters of laws of a judicial system and a good society. Not take shochad, not taking bribes, because even righteous people can be led astray by bribes. And then we said Begir lo terchatz. Don't you dare oppress a stranger, not anyone, for sure not a stranger. But you know what it feels like to be a stranger because you were strangers in Egypt. And then work your field for six years and do Shemitah every seventh year. Why? Again, for social reasons, for the poor people have what to eat, and work 6 days a week and take a rest on Shabbat. Again, for your workers have a day of rest. Just like in Dvarim. Okay? And then everything I told you, make sure to keep. Don't talk about other gods. Instead, come to me on the critical times of the agricultural year, to remember that when God blesses you with a good harvest and gives you plenty, remember not to say thank you, but to act thank you and use your prosperity and the God that gives you to build a good, just society. And if God sees that's what you're going to do, then He'll bless your thing. Just read the Tochacha, what you say every day in Shema. If you keep my mitzvot and build, God will bless the land and give us rain. If you don't keep the mitzvot, He'll have to give us famine or war, give us trouble until we have a wake-up call. Hey, that's Pshat of Chumash. Now, why do we do all that? The memory of the Exodus shapes our day-to-day life, 24/7. That's for sure. Now, it's so important that once a year I go crazy about it, but the once a year commandment has a goal to instill into every day of our lives. I'm sure I used the Mother's Day analogy many times before. Remember, every day is Mother's Day, but once a year I go crazy about it to make sure every day is Mother's Day. All the holidays work that way. Now, if the goal of the yearly celebration is the daily memory, remember in the Seder, Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah was hitting 70. He pretended he didn't understand what's his daily commandment. Remember, he never understood why we mention it every day and every night, especially every night. And then what does he do? He quotes his Rebbe Ben Zoma. Remember, I'm hitting 7. Never understood why we have to say it every day and every night. Remember in the Shema, it says just open a chumash and says, why do we eat matzah for 7 days? Why? Etc. But he's saying the goal of the yearly celebration is for the daily memory. So don't be surprised we talk about it every day. Adarabah, the whole reason we talk about it once a year is for the daily memory. He's one of the 5 rabbis in Bnei Brak having that discussion. Are you with me? Now, so that idea of the goal of the holiday is to instill a core basic principle of Jewish day-to-day life, but make a big deal about it. I need a transition day to make sure the ritual I did on the holiday becomes educational and transformative and becomes part of my day-to-day life without the ritual. And therefore, what am I going to do on the last day of the holiday? Nothing, other than think and talk like they did in time of, like the Chemikar onto that. And answer. Now, after this important statement, I have a parenthetical note about the first topic. Remember, there's 2 topics here. One is, where do we bring Pesach? But Pesach Shemecha b'makom asher yivchar Hashem. That's the Chiddush. There's 2 Chiddushim here. One is where I bring Korban Pesach, not at home, but in the temple in Jerusalem. Another Chiddush of why we do it, to remember it every day of our life. I'm going to go back now and talk about this law about in Jerusalem. And from Dalet to Zayin, I'm going to have a parenthetical comment. Don't even think about bringing it home. Like, from Pasuk A. Don't even think about, you can't bring Pesach anywhere you want. Only b'makom asher yivchar Hashem. And you can't just shecht it there and bring it home. You have to shecht it there and eat it there. Cook it there, eat it there, b'makom asher yivchar, and then go home. You can't just, you got to spend the whole first day in Jerusalem. Got it? Now I'm going back to the previous topic about eating matzah for 7 days. In order that, remember, eat matzah for Shivat Yamim Ta'ala Matzot Lechem Oni. I'm going to go from Pasuk Gimel, which includes what do you call it? Dalet together. I'm going to go right to Pasuk Chet. Sheshit yamim tocha matzot, uvyom hashvi atzeret l'Hashem Elokecha, lo taseh melacha. This is baffling, this Pasuk, right? What's it teach us? It's like, where's it coming from? We just said eat matzah for 7 days. Now only eat matzah for 6 days? Remember what the rabbis learned from here? We're not chayiv on day 7. And therefore, if I'm not chayiv on day 7, I'm not chayiv on the first 6 days at all. And they do somersaults to say that this pasuk teaches you that even though it says 7 times in Chumash, eat matzah for 7 days, you're not obligated. Oh, that's a halachic discussion. But they make a big deal about this pasuk that what? We eat matzah for 6 days, and on the last day of these 7 days of Chag HaMatzot, what do? Nothing. Now, the chiddush here is not Isur Melacha. Why? Because I don't mention that Isur Melacha means the prohibition to do work. I read already in Sefer Shmot that the first day is a Mikra Kodesh. Remember in chapter 12 and in chapter 13, it's in your tefillin. In there it says on the first day of Chag HaMatzot and the 7th day of Chag HaMatzot is a Mikra Kodesh. You can't do Melacha except for Ochel Nefesh. So I know this law, and I don't mention it I don't mention Isur Melacha. The prohibition of work, I don't mention it by Shavuot, I don't mention it by Sukkot, I don't mention it by the first day, only on this day. So the Kiddush here is not that we don't work on that day. The Kiddush is Atzeret, and what do we do on Atzeret? Nothing. We don't do the ritual on that day. It's the last day of the holiday season, one in the spring and one in the fall. I have 2 holiday seasons, the spring and the fall. And I can argue, where does the year begin? In Nisan or Tishrei, there's logic to both. The day begin at night. Remember, Vayikra, Boker, does the day begin in the evening or in the morning? Famous famous Rashbam. There's logic to both, but do I begin my year with Chodesh Nisan or begin my year with the month of Tishrei? We have both. We're going to dedicate the month of Nisan to remembering the Exodus, because that's when we left Egypt, and the month of Tishrei to our agricultural annual cycle. We're restarting the year once a year, and I'm gonna take that new year, the whole month of the new year, the end of last year, the beginning of the new year, tons and tons of holidays and mitzvot and rituals, blowing shofar, not eating, remember, sitting in a sukkah, etc., lulav, arba minim, and on the last day of this holiday, 7th month, I have a special holiday called Atzeret, and what do? Nothing. To make sure that I need one day to make sure I understood why I did these rituals and bring them into my day-to-day life. It's a stop sign, stop, reflect, and continue traveling with all that religion, with all that energy. Whenever you remember, whatever you recharge, call it a recharge. Just recharge my understanding of my Judaism. I have to take that message of the holidays and bring it into my day-to-day life. And that's it. No, so I'm taking this pasuk. I understand what we did. This Leman Tizkor Yom Tzedcha Me'eretz Mitzrayim Kol Yemei Chayecha as the goal of the once-a-year celebration, and I'm using Atzeret to highlight this. I'm putting this whole section together, saying the need for the Atzeret on the last day of Chag HaMatzot is based on this transition, the goal of the daily memory. And now that this defines what Atzeret is, I'm using Re'eh to understand that Atzeret is the last day of a week laden with ritual, right? Which has meaning, important meaning. But on the last day, I stop the ritual to think about the holiday and do nothing other than think about the holiday and its meaning. And that's going to be my transition day to day-to-day life. Now, if that's Atzeret, what happened in Sefer Nehemiah? Right? They spent we did Rosh Hashanah, right? And Chag HaSukkot made a big deal about it. When it's over, we have Atzeret. And the Atzeret was meaningful because the next day or the day after, they have a tshuva gathering, they sit and study Torah, and they start getting their society together. They start keeping the Torah. Remember they have this whole gathering with this whole speech, and they do something about it. They take upon themselves new obligations. Remember? We're going to go back to keep our deraisa, we're going to make up new derabanans, etc. But they're going to make an effort to rebuild the community and society and rebuild a relationship with God in a much more positive way, with the hope that the second temple, right? No, in order for sovereignty to return to Beit Sheni, maybe we came back in Beit Sheni under Persian sovereignty, we're hoping to return and be sovereign again, but they understand to be worthy of that, we need to get our society together. and learn Torah and keep Torah and apply it and come up with new ideas, be innovative, and get the themes and continue it. And therefore, that 7th month in that year when Nehemiah built the wall had tremendous educational meaning. And that was the result of that Torah study. And therefore, the last week of Tishrei was when people went through a spiritual high state on a thing, and then they do something with it to make it meaningful for the rest of the year and hopefully for the rest of their lives. And that becomes the meaning of Atzeret. Now, with the 5 minutes I have left, I want to talk about why Shmini Atzeret, why this word Shmini, how it relates not just to Sukkot. For sure, it's the last day, the day after Sukkot is over. Why it's also the last day of Yom Kippur. Why? Because where earlier in Chumash do we have the word Shmini? What special event happened on Shmini?
Parshat Shmini in the
So let's take a look at it.
Brit Milah.
We have Brit Milah earlier. Okay, let's go back. Let's do Yom Kippur first. Then we'll get to in Leviticus chapter 16. Remember?
That's when the Kohanim.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's later on. I'm sorry. Chapter 9.
Atzeret resonates with.
In chapter 8, we had the 7 days of Miluim. Every day, Aaron brought a chatat and olah and his sons. Remember the 7 days of Upetach Oel Moed. Here,
And Moshe did the
I need 7 days of kapara in preparation. Okay. And then on the 8th day, after we got everything ready, chapter 9, on the 8th day, Vayibam Shmini, Moshe calls Aaron and tells him what? Aaron, you bring a chatat and an olah, okay, in front of God. Bnei Yisrael bring a chatat and olah, a sir lachatat, and a special olah, and a shlamim, because that's not a fast day that day. But basically, we have the first prototype of Aaron bringing a chatat olah, and Am Yisrael bringing a chatat olah. Why? Because this day, ki hayom Hashem nira lechem, God's glory is going to return to the Mishkan on that day. And Moshe tells the people, you want God's glory to return to us after Har Sinai and now dwell in the Mishkan. Because God's coming, do this ritual to inaugurate the temple. And therefore, we do this once, and then we're going to need to do it once a year afterwards. We have to re-inaugurate the temple once a year, which in theory, I should do every year on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But in the meantime, what happened? We have Chet Ego, etc. And something really bad happened. Remember on chapter 10, Nadav and Avihu. And therefore, Acharei Mot Shnei Bnei Aaron, it's very dangerous to do this, to go into the Kodesh Kodeshim. And therefore, God tells Moshe, don't go, what do you call it? After they died. Don't go, be careful when you go to the Kodesh Kodeshim, etc. Because you need Anan. How do you come in? We have the Par Chatat and Ayol for Aaron. And special clothing in Anan. And Yisrael bring a Chatat Olah, etc. And we need the Anan, the Torah, the whole thing. And we have this whole ritual, which we have to do. I'm going to go to the last line. This ritual needs to be done once a year. 1 second, let me get to the end. Remember? Once a year, I need to do this cleansing ritual of the temple. Got it? But it could be on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, like they did the first time. No. I need to do it once a year. I have a better date for it. Why? Listen carefully. We have this whole, I'm sorry, because we need to do, remember, I need to do the kapara because God dwells even though we're tameh. And we're showing God, even though we don't deserve it. We want to be your people, and therefore God dwells with even though we're not worthy. But what makes us worthy is our recognition that we're not worthy. And we did that whole shir before Yom Kippur. And then, so we do this one. So now I need to explain, why am I doing this annual re-cleansing and rededication of the temple once a year on this day? Okay. First, we have the whole service. We didn't say what day it was on yet. Now, what's set in our calendar? On what we call Yom Kippur. We fast on that day. Don't do melacha. etc. Why? Now, this isn't the reason for the service. This is the reason why I picked this day. Because it's Yom Kippur, the safest day to rededicate the temple and not get killed like Nadav and Abihu did is on Yom Kippur. Why? This is the reason for the date, not the reason for the day. That was the Kiddush. That was a separate Kiddush. I'm saying the word Shmini, the idea of Yom HaShmini, thematically is the first Yom Kippur. So therefore, having something special on the word, using the word Shmini Atzeret, it's not just the 8th day of Sukkot, but it's also Yom HaShmini, which relates to Yom Kippur. Because of the Korban Yom Kippur, and I'm having a connection between Shmini and Yom Kippur through Parshat Shmini and the parallel Korban. Now, there's also 7 and 8 with Brit Milah. Remember, Parshat Tazria, the song's right there. Ishaki Tazria, V'yalda Zachar. Remember? Shivat Yamim. Okay. Uv'yom HaShmini Mo B'sar L'to. We have that back in Lech Lecha as well. 7 and 8. Now, what's Brit Milah? Remember the Brit Milah? We'll do this real quick. Back to Breshit. Chapter 17 in Breshit. Avram's 99, etc. Vani Briti Tishmor. Okay. V'freitu otcha. Okay. Vakimoti et Briti beni u'benecha u'ben zachar l'adam Brit Olam. Liot lachalim zachar achrecha. Notice this is the Brit. Vakimoti et Briti. That the oath Brit will be circumcision. U'nematem et p'sadachem v'ayta l'oath Brit beni u'benechem. But the Brit is Liot lachal Elohim. Vakimoti et Briti beni u'benecha. And for all your offspring, an eternal Brit. I'm your God, you're my people. That's Malchiot in a nutshell. He's our boss, he's everyone's God. As we're serving God, we have to remember we're employees, not consumers. Once a year, I make a big deal about the idea that God's our boss. It's our duty to praise him. That's why we're different. That's our hope. Remember, Anleinu. And our hope that through our service of God, other nations will recognize God and be good. And it's our duty. We have to remember that responsibility of why we're chosen. Not only that we're chosen, but why we're chosen. In the service of God for the sake of all nations. I need to remember that once a year. I go crazy about it on Rosh Hashanah. I need to remember every day when I say the Shema. So the theme of Rosh Hashanah, of God being our boss, needs a daily reminder. We say Shema, that's the last pasuk of Bachiyot. I go crazy once a year. I remember every day. I need Atzeret to remember that thing. I know God should be strict, but he's willing to forgive us. He's willing to be El Rachum B'Chanun, etc. That makes my relationship livable, makes it, I can learn from my mistakes. I need to remember the theme of Yom Kippur, and the idea of Kapara, and the idea of the need to do tshuva and God's willing. I do that once a year. I go crazy about it. God's midot tov rachamim. I need to remember it every day. And then the theme of Sukkot, of not letting prosperity get to your head, but not just saying thank you for your prosperity, but acting thank you, and not letting v'achalta v'savati barachta, and not kochi batzem yodi. Remember the Shirim and Sukkot. That'll be the theme for Sukkot. So now, the whole month of Tishrei, I'll end with Parshat, with, where are we? Go back here. We'll go back to Parshat Sefer Vayikra. Where are we? Tanakh, Torah, Vayikra. Keep starting for a second. And Chav Gimel. We read over and over again on Yom Tov. We have all the Moedim. Oh, by the way, I could have brought another 7 and 8. We start laning on Yom Tov from Shor Chesavos Kivaled. Shivat Temim Tachitimo, Yom Shiva Halil, Sedel Korban Hashem. 7 and 8 again. And that's we always start from here instead of the beginning of Perach Gimel, because let's start with 7 and 8, and then we have all the holidays, and the last holiday is 7 and 8. It gives closure to the unit, and then what's it say? B'chodesh Hashvi. I'm sorry. It starts there in Chav Gimel. Tav B'Nisrael B'chodesh Hashvi B'Echad L'Chodesh Zichron Torah, what we call Rosh Hashanah, remembering why you're God's your boss, etc. Then remember the word on the 10th of the month, Yom Kippurim. Then we have Sukkot without the double presentation, and then it says on the 15th. Remember, on the first day of the month, even on the 10th, on the 15th, we have a Chag, 7 days of Sukkot, and the last day, a Shabbaton, Shabbaton, and then sit in the Sukkot for 7 days, but Sukkot Tishvot Shivat Yamim, and then the last day being the Atzeret. Remember, Yom Shmini B'Kochet Lechem, Atzerti, don't do work on that day. That's the Atzeret for the whole month of Tishrei. Got my point? So Shmini Atzeret is the last day to make sure the last day, the holiday, doesn't end the holiday. It's not a dead end stop. It's a stop sign. We stop, we internalize, we remember why we dedicated the whole month. Once we dedicated the whole month to refocusing, recharging our understanding of our Judaism, our relationship with God, our responsibility, how we not just say thank you and act thank you, etc., how we can learn from our mistakes, all the different things about holidays, and now we have to apply them to our day-to-day life, and that'll be Atzeret. Now, who applied that beautifully? Ezra Nehemiah, and we sort of allude to it every day in davening in Vayikra David, which we do every day, right? Even on Shabbos. So something when you daven every day and you mumble Psukei Zimra, you want to understand why they put in Uchrotim Al Brit, in Vayikra David, we had the Psukim from Nehemiah. Now you have a beautiful understanding what it's all about and how awesome Chazal were when they pick what we do in davening. And that's what I want to share with you for the last week of Tishrei. I'll take questions, but I have to finish in 2 minutes, so I can't have too much time for questions, but I'll see if there's anything in the chat. And I have to thank Jay, because I wasn't going to give a shir today, but Jay said, Jay, you decide.
Menachem, Atzeret resonates with Sara'at, which is liberated by the bird that is set free on the 8th day, like the Sel Azazel, which is set free on the 8th day. So
it's the same gematria, Atzeret and Sarat, right? Probably?
Exactly. Not gematria, letters, anagram. Sarat is an anagram of Atzeret.
Okay, that's why we
and it involves
when we go to shul.
And it involves
we send away our sins.
Liberation with a free bird.
Yeah. That for sure relates to Silas Hazel, for sure. Okay, let me check. That was it for the chat. Okay, I guess either. Okay, it's sort of very good. Okay, differences and what now? Oh yeah, best one. Very good, Jay. I'm not Jay. Ed. Okay, the best proof that Shmini Atzeret is not just Sukkot. There's Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur because the Korban and Pinchas. That's the best proof of them all. The special Korban on Sukkot. I'll just show you real quick. I have open up my shir again. Remember I used this joke that in Parshat Pinchas, when it comes to Sukkot, we go ballistic.
14 kvasim every day. Shmini Atzeret, we go back to 7.
Yeah, 70, we go ballistic. Understand? We have 13 parim, 12, 70 altogether. On where are we?
And it's the
where are we? In Bamidbar. I'm sorry. Bamidbar. So usually on Rosh Chodesh and where are we? On Rosh Chodesh and on Chag HaMatzot and on Shavuot, we bring 2 parim, 1 island, 7 kvasim. That's the Olah. And then on Rosh Hashanah, where's that? It's in chapter 29. That's the regular one. On Rosh Hashanah, we bring. One second, right the way. Rosh Hashanah, we bring Parachad ben Bakar, Ayalachad 7 kvasim. 117 one. Okay. On Yom Kippur, we bring Parachad, Ayalachad 7 kvasim. Comes Sukkot again. We have 13 parim. Okay, double 2 elim, 14 kvasim. And the next day, 12 parim. 2 elim is 14 kvasim every day. But when we get to Yom HaShmini, it's Atzeret again, Yelachem. What do we bring? Parachad, Ayalachad, 7 kvasim, just like Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So that's the best proof that Shmini Atzeret is skira, is a closure, not just for Sukkot, but also for the whole month of the set, for Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur as well. And that shows you that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur work as a team. Because we couldn't be God's people if it wasn't for God's Minot Rachamim. Okay, anyway, I have to stop here. We'll stop here. Thank you so much. And next week we'll start a series on, what are we starting?
Vayikra.
Oh, Vayikra, okay, because we're going in order.
It's all there. We have the description. It's on the website.
I even sent Jay a description. I forgot what I wrote.
Right, okay, yes.
Okay.
All right.
Jay, continue.
It's too bad that here in Eretz Israel, we've lost Shmini Atzeret.
Yeah,
Yes,
they should move it to 2 days.
Holiday,
For
which
that
is
was my Dvar Torah. If anybody read it for Shmini Atzeret Simchas Torah, that was the Dvar Torah I wrote about 1 day, 2 days. Yeah, it's Simchas Torah was only meant for Chutzlarts. That's clear. It's a Simchas Torah.
I have to leave, Jay, so continue.
Go, Rabbi Nisiyat Tova. Please go. We'll see you next week from Alon Shvut.
Okay, good.
Okay, and I put in the with all our upcoming classes, we'll probably add one or two more, by the way. But for the classes we have now for the fall programming, I think 12 different series we have going on, will be going on. So we got lots to keep you busy. And like I mentioned, tomorrow, Tzvik Ramet begins his interactive Beit Midrash, a little bit different than I think, than our regular classes. And they're only, for your point of view, the difference is if you want to come, you got to keep your camera on. That's we're going to ask that everybody do that. Many of you have your camera on, so that's not a problem. For those that don't, that's you'll have to decide if you want to join us. And the idea is we are going to try to keep the class. I mean, we'll see how many people show up the first class, but I have a rough idea, but then we'll, the idea is to be as interactive as we can during the things. We're calling it Bereishit Beit Midrash. It was Rabbi Grumit's idea, and I thought that was a great idea. He said I could give a lecture on Bereishit, or I can, we'll do what we do. So that's tomorrow at 1 p.m. Next week, Tamar Wiseman will do The Sons of Rachel at 11 a.m. That was sort of her time beforehand. And of course, tomorrow night, Mark Shapiro, 8:30 p.m. at night. And I mentioned Tuesday, Dr. Sokolov, Parsha and Piyut, something new also. The Piyut team that people used to say 900 years ago or 1100 years ago in Bavel, and we stopped saying before they daven. So have a piyut on the parsha every week, and that's on Tuesday 10 a.m. and of course 1 p.m. Rabbi Shulman will be back his regular time slot. I should say 8 p.m. because this year he's now has made Aliyah over the summer and he's living in Israel. So his shiur moved from, actually he was giving his shiur at 12 p.m. because he lived in St. Louis in the Central Time Zone. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. 1 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. from Israel, and that's on Tuesday. And then Rabbi Helfgott again beginning his series on Sefer Yecheskel, 8:30 Wednesday night. Okay. And Shuli Mission's class is going to start not till November. She's her class on Thursdays. And okay, we look forward to learning with you. Please invite a friend. That's and let's get more people to come to learn, and everybody should be well. We should hear good news from Israel. We should have lasting peace. Everybody can hope for miracles. Listen, it's things aren't perfect, but please God, it's something, lots of good will come from this. And Baruch Hashem, the hostages, at least the life hostages, are home, and slowly and hopefully but surely the ones who are unfortunately no longer alive, gave their life on behalf of the Jewish people, will come for Kfura, their eternal home. Okay, we should please God hear good news. Okay, everybody, we be well. Enjoy it's beautiful here in Toronto, 20 degrees today, and that is Celsius, not Fahrenheit, in case people think about Canada. 20 degrees Celsius, that is 68 Fahrenheit for those Americans who don't know what Celsius means, okay? And you were supposed to become Celsius, At the same time, in the 70s, Canada, we went metric, but the Americans, they chickened out. So here, when you cross the border, there's signs, 60 miles an hour is 100 kilometers. 100 kilometers is like 62 miles an hour. But that's the speed limit here, and in Celsius and metric and meters. Although the CFL, Canadian Football League, still plays yards. Football field's 110 yards. They haven't changed that. Sports, they're not going to go to 10 meters, which was interesting. But anyways, okay. Let's hope the Blue Jays win tonight to talk about the Narishkeit, but okay, everybody needs a little Narishkeit. Blue Jays haven't been in the World Series in 32 years, so they got to win tonight and tomorrow night to make it. So let's see what happens. Play the Dodgers. Okay, everybody, have a wonderful day and be well. Hope to see you soon at some great learning, and invite your friends. Bye-bye.